Well, good morning, Scott Henderson, shooter. And hey, we are going to go over swing trade notes. And then, of course, at the end of our presentation, please do review our disclosure. The dollar, I need to get to my full screen here. Now, this push in the dollar, clearly we're going to probably push down to about 96, I would think. Now, in my view, that's absolutely bullish for equities. 97, we probably start slowing down and top out a little bit as far as the indices are concerned. Let's take a look at TLT. Really, he's done nothing, just sort of sitting there. However, I do think we get a bid. And when I say a bid, I mean, I think we get a little panic once the price of the Iran war actually gets baked into the indices. And with that, I'm going to jump right to the S&P. One heck of a move. And actually, I'm just absolutely ticked. I'm not fully loaded. However, there was just no way to know that didn't confirm. And, when I look at the euphoria in this first leg, I'm like, man, I should have known. However, I think we win and come back here. I still don't think that pattern has changed here. Now, the broadening formation, which I've added to my chart. So, assuming this was our peaking drive 1, peaking drive 2 grouping. So we're going to get a 3 up here. The more euphoric it gets, the deeper that retrace is going to be at some point. So we're still in this box of like no man's land as far as I'm concerned. I just don't see that changing that much. And that's just how it is. Let me just jump over to the NASDAQ, not as bullish as the S&P 500. And if you notice where the flow is, actually, let me just bump back to the spot. We're about ready to, we are putting in all-time highs as I speak here. But all of that is coming in the futures. There's not really that much flow into the individual name. So to be very candid, that could be the plunge protection team. Now, I don't know why they would be doing it here because we really don't have the circumstances for that to be done. But we don't really have that resolution to the war. We have a ceasefire. And until we get beyond that window, there is really not a lot of institutional buying when you look at the flow, especially the flow report that I put out. I mean, it's non-existent still in the million plus trades. They're chasing specific names like Tesla. Off of that low, got a huge bid this morning. Just way too much concentration for this push to hold. Okay, let's take a look at Bitcoin. Now, I still think my bias is here. I think we get up to about this ridge and reject. We are seeing some flow back into Bitcoin, some on the liquidity side. Gold sort of flattened out, even though we put in a new high. The volume that was going into gold has slowed down. And that is going to be just as noisy as the Middle East. So if you get a pop, make a couple bucks, take your profits, wait for it to back test, take another shot. Because the reality is that can pull back, very much like what I see in Bitcoin. Now, we get back above this 97, then I change my mind. Now I think this was the bottom, and now we're going to put it in another bullish leg, which should take out our 160. I still think that happens. I just don't think that's going to be in the first quarter this year, and probably not the second quarter. All right, let's jump to some of the names that we have here. I'm going to try and stay very focused on the bucket here. So just going through the names that we have open. I closed most this morning. Probably should have closed it before then, but I didn't actually notice it didn't hit my stop because I had it down here at 23, whatever it is, 23.35. And I just happened to be looking at it for this meeting. And I said, nah, I'm not keeping it there. So we'll probably not put another piece on there. Arrow, we're still holding off of this low here. It hasn't taken out my invalidation shelf, but I still expect it to recover. It's just one of the names I want to hold. See if that gets where we're going. Still holding Sentinel-1. Nice little push off of that low. It's going to get out of here. It's just whether or not I'm holding it by the time it does it. That sort of is the MO, at least this quarter anyways. All right, Oracle. We put this on. Actually got a decent entry. Nice pop today right at the open. I don't like how it's rejecting on the highs, though. This is, in other words, we're getting the pops, right? And then if you watch the candle, so you got your open and you got your close. There's quite a little bit of range, and we're sort of hovering below 50% of that candle. However, we wicked above. I want the body to get back above 171 roughly, 171.50. Then I'll add, because then my next target will be up here about 208. I think this is one of the best candidates we have right now because there is a lot of flow on this, a lot of buzz. Going all the way out to July as far as the strikes. So there's a number of, I think it has institutional interest as well. All right, now XLI, I also closed that this morning on that pullback, made a couple bucks on it. Just didn't want to hold it, thinking it would come back and test itself, and then I'll load it back up at that point. All right, Google, good entry. Just I wasn't big enough. I had a half a position on it. I trimmed it, I don't know, last week or the week before. Probably should have kept it on. I just don't have any, with this, what's going on in Iran, I don't know. I don't like trading. That's the hard part. When I'm on the wrong side of too much stuff, I've known through the history of what I do, and as far as trading, there's a time to sit on the sideline because maybe you're not in tune with what the markets are doing. And that's how I feel right now. So it's like I'm holding back, even though I see the trade, I see the setup. It's like, okay, well, the last 4 shots I took, only one of them worked. When I'm good and I'm right, I'll hit, I take 10 shots, 8 or 9 of them. So when I'm way below that dynamic, my model for risk on, risk off changes substantially based on the market condition. So right now, I still perceive us being there. And, one of the challenges is we have no confirmation of this move back to the upside. So I would rather wait for the back test and then take my shot because my risk reward is high. All right, so let's look at the requests here. All right, let's start off with AMKR and runway. You got that in just in time. Nice little pullback here. I would like it better on a little pullback here just from the look. And I'm going to just take this leg in as an example. I'd like to see the 382 at 52 or 54. I would use confirming trend support if I was in it. I'm not. So, I would look at this very much. You would have been taken out, right? So, your biggest range that you want to give it is that right there, roughly that number. So it would be, you don't want to hold it if it gets below this 54. Gets below there. 618 gets tagged. It's probably going to fill that gap. That's where it likely will go. All right, looking at USAR, done nothing wrong here. It's rejecting a little bit up here, which we expect. Those are rejected here and rejected here, then continued, right? Now, we don't have that kind of. Let me rephrase that. Yeah, we have peaking drive 1, peaking drive 2, like we got our reject here. So that reduces my conviction by 50%. But look at how big this band is and how far back it is. So the question is this going to take this out? It already has taken this out. This is where your highest sell side imbalance is, right here at that shelf. So is it going to come in? I'm just looking to see. So we have got a gap. So this is right where we are. We clear this, we should head towards these highs right here, the next prior highs. First it's got to take this out, but we should head here. So in this situation, being that it's in rare earths, I would hold because I think there's some upside. However, it takes out the wick of this low at 1554. Regardless, I would probably be trimming and be down to a half a position size. Looking at Lithium America, nice little pop into the gap. We didn't fill the gap. Close. Our gap is what? At 346. Still constructive here. I'm looking at it as kind of a flat, still a larger flat, maybe back to about $11. So until it proves otherwise, this is another one I'd hold. Right here is where I would use my stop or my invalidation as far as the look that I would have there. So that's roughly at $4. Gets below there, then I'd be trimming. Looking at Palantir, it looks pretty decent here. I looked at the fibs here. I don't remember why I didn't put it anywhere, but so we've come back over here to this shelf. It's an overshoot. RSI structure's solid here. You have a confirming low grouping, 3 drives, right? Beautiful, wonderful thing. That, by the way, that is a XABC pattern, which is, just a beautiful thing. Once you begin to recognize what those puppies are, they're one of the one of the patterns that will completely revert to the prior numbers. Now we tested, didn't quite take that out, but still structurally, it's fairly accurate. This wick off right here was your tell, and this shelf, if you're looking over here. So Palantir is actually a good spot to give it a shot. I'd like it back at 133 first, but you got 3 generals there, not really that euphoric. But if you look at the history of the tape, we got very few large generals here. They tend to be sporadic. Here's the only point where we got 3 of them in a row where it was big. So I look at this as building momentum. So it's probably more of a leg like this. So on this next leg, once we get a little consolidation like we saw here, which is right at the exact same shelf. So we put in 143, that back test, that holds. You get a good wick there. That's a good spot to add it. But then I think it heads back towards 200 is what it looks like. All right. SNDK, I want to just dress for this for a minute because we have all kinds of flow and volume. And this is one of the names that's getting a bid with what's going on with AI power, data centers, etc., because disk memory is becoming a huge issue. So we get back to this ledge I want to add a piece on, even way the heck up here. And I'm going to come out to the weekly on this one. I think I'm conservative at $1,200 on. I think I'm conservative. The larger number to me looks substantial. You know, I had this lower run. I picked out all these three, and notice how it's staying above the third lot. Now, each of these I was predicting a shallower move. So it is not what I call a meandering or rolling impulse. It is no longer that. So that means 3 becomes the longest wave. So 3 probably could push in excess of, $5,000 at some point, if that's the case. I mean, it just got some huge upside. If it does decide that it's going to catch a bid there and the pattern actually materializes. So it would be more like an impulse leg wave that would look like that. Because really, there's only 2 types of patterns, even though you have motive waves as general, is all of the impulse legs, leading diagonal, ending diagonal, and a full impulse. There are different formats of the impulse, leading diagonal or ending diagonal. They have specific patterns that they form. So when an impulse leg invalidates one thesis, which is the rolling top, right, the only leftover outcome is an extremely euphoric move. So I like the way that looks right at the moment. Let's take a look at Unity. Good spot. Good spot. A little tight on the waves, or as far as the legs. If we're measuring this leg, you got sort of a pullback. This is not unusual, by the way, where you get a really deep retrace on one, and I wouldn't necessarily call that, I probably should call that 2. So we're going to get this little push like this. Then we get an ABC pattern. It'll come in something like this, basically, right? So we get a little pullback, this ledge test. Notice where we're testing here, these ledges, these resistance, right? We've now cleared that. So when this line becomes support, that's when you want a full position size on this. Once it comes back and tests that 23, 22 and that holds, that's where you want to be at full position size. That pretty much is confirmation we're going to this box around 34 to 38 from where we are. And the most likely outcome is once this regroups and gets back above here. This is just going to be a blip. This is going to be wave 1, a larger wave 1. Let me just put that in there. So this will be wave 1, right? That's 2. So what are we going to get? 3, 4, 5. Can't even draw it on this because it's too big. But the reality is it pushes right back up to maybe 350 at some point on Unity. So it has a huge upside as far as a risk reward, basically how I see it. So unless it gives you a reason not to hold, and the only reason I wouldn't be holding is it closes below 1707. All right, let's come back to the daily on AST Space Mobile. Now I have all these flat patterns built out here, and what's it doing? Pretty much doing what I said it would. I love it when I'm right, and I absolutely hate it when I'm wrong. But what's the closest pattern that I see? Are we here? I admit it. It actually overshot that. Let me come back and make this fit now in the real world, not just my visual. So we're going to call that our 4. So where we come in with our 5 here. Now realize 5 could stop here. 5 could stop here. 5 could stop here. More likely it's going to be level equality. So you probably draw a slope, from this point right forward. So this is an optimal entry at 63.64 because you're likely to get a bid. This shelf likely holds right here. Even though it's not broad, anytime you have thin shelves versus a broader shelf like this, if it slices through it with the body, it's done. It's done. Usually you go to your next shelf. It's aggressive as far as the play. So a broader shelf is not quite as aggressive if you're going to be wrong. So that's just as far as the understanding of how that flat works out. But I would like it much better at 63.64. In there. All right, let's look at Galaxy Digital. Nice move. It's coming out. Just quick overshoot. RSI is a beautiful thing. You got your confirming low right here, right? What do we get here? Divergent low. What did it do? Just wick below the other wick. Notice how tight that is. Oh, it's a beautiful thing. Jeez. These are the most euphoric squeezes that you can get when this happens. When it just takes your wick, overshoots it, wicks past it, body closes on it. Solid. Okay, here's what the wave looks like. I can get to it. So this is... I'm going to call this our 1. So we will get a 3 like this, likely. Back test, that holds. And then it'll either be a shallow or it just run. And notice how it does like to run. It does like to run. We have this first bull candle, second one, gapped, held. As long as it doesn't take out the wick here at this 22.64, I think it's good. We're heading back towards that 34. It might be choppy when we get up here. It's not as aggressive euphoric as here or here. But notice it does like to run once it gets up there. A lot of gaps. A lot of gap. And I'm just, and what I'm saying is you gapped here at the open, right? Then you tested it with a wick, right? Then you closed below it, right? I mean, you opened above it the next day, then you closed below it, right? Or right at it, right? So that's this little shelf here is going to tell us how impulsive this move is. So this 2109, that holds. It will be a launching pad. I mean, and the larger structure that I have on this as far as a weekly, the way that I see this is we're going to get that 3. Now realize that's a shallow 3. I'm assuming a rolling, meandering impulse wave, not a true impulse. A true impulse wave would be much higher as far as price otherwise. So this has a lot of upside too. So this is a name I think in this market where we are, how well it's held up. Notice how this consolidation during this whole drawdown, it was constructed, right? Even though we broke this shelf, I would have rather it not broke this shelf. Rather it not broke this shelf. But notice where our next ledge is. We haven't gotten down there. We have another little back test here in this range here, which we've kind of held. So I think the strength, unless we take out this shelf right here, which is just below it, this implies euphoria. So that's my 2 cents. All right, looking at CAT, the beast. I still can't believe I closed mine out. Okay, consolidation's right there. I think, peaking drive 1, peaking drive 2, peaking drive 3, we get a consolidation, and that's the spot where I want to buy it back. That's my thought. But CAT has some huge upside. Realize the infrastructure that's going, and there's just the challenging part for CAT is how much is Europe going to slow them down, and how much what's going on in the Middle East is going to slow them down, especially if the Saudis get a hair somewhere and decide to broaden okay, I'm not buying military hardware, and they come back and say, okay, I'm not buying any U.S. hardware. CAT will get killed. That's the only problem with CAT. So we need to be conscious of that. But from an internal standpoint, if you look at Deere and CAT, and I wasn't going to look at Deere, but let me flip over there real quick a second. This is the core of really the whole echelon of building society, or an industrial growth engine. And neither Deere or CAT imply that we're weak at all. They're broadening. And I'll use Deere as the good example of what a broadening formation looks like. And quite often you get your first grouping test, then you get your 3 peaking drives after that. So, that puts us back at $700 first before we're going to get a back test. I'm going to use this as our marking point. So we'll have this broadening formation that, of course, like this. Then we will get a probably a meandering back, and then we'll get our 3rd drive up here. Then it rejects, because typically it's going to skirt this line in some way, maybe aggressive. Notice how it's skirting this line. See how I'd established this resistance line here, and it's skirting it all the way up? It's still skirting it. I mean, we can come back and pull this line way the heck back down here and say, hey, we've skirted it pretty much, and we can come in and anchor it almost to the wick of prior low to give us a structural visualization of what's happening. This is a solid uptrend in a broadening form, but still a beautiful thing. All right, let me come back over to APD, hitting a little resistance here, significant. You got this huge sell here. I don't like that right there. I mean, we're not even at that level. That's right here. Come down. We're above there. So that is the shelf. Let me clean that up, get to the right spot. So that is the shelf. We do not want 50% of that shelf closing below 275.11. I would be out on the long. You've got resistance a little bit higher, confluence. I'm just trying to see where we're at. You got your first buy side imbalance is right here, which we are right at it. We're just testing it right now. We've wicked above it twice. I'm counting my waves. Kind of an ending diagonal. That means it could be an aggressive retrace. Let me just put that on the tape for you. 1, 4. So 5 should end soon. If we get up here, I mean, the perfect world would be we get up here. The most likely outcome with that resistance is we test like this wick here, which we just did, which is right where we are. That makes it very challenging. Fib would bring us back to, I just measure the whole wave here. So you're going to get a minimum pullback to 284.36. This is our shelf, so maybe 274 is shallow, aggressive, euphoric. Will we come back and test the highs at some point? We very well could. And notice how you have this slope from the body of the close on this candle. Notice how perfect those tags are to that slope. So you had your next wicked off, overshoot, stop run, boom, you're out, done. What do we get again? Stop run, boom, you're out. So the MO here is to skirt that line. So the trend is that line back to the upside. So your bias is long. Any pullback to that 281 is where you want to take a shot long. Notice how we also have the peaking drives forming in RSI. MAC is sort of neutral to a little bullish, not really aggressive in the bands like we were here. Notice how aggressive that is. We're nowhere near that. We're not even really here. We're more like this, but on steeper slopes. So it is climbing. It is climbing. There's no question about that. All right. ATX. Boy, that is a tough read. Tough read when I say this is you got this peak, you got this retrace, you got this peak, you got this retrace. So it's an XABC, but it didn't give it back. So it's euphoric for that reason. However, you have another, there's really no back to this. I guess you could call that 2. So let's just call this 1. You call this 2. Call this 3, and then we put it in our 5. So now we get a fib back test. Taking out the 2, 3, 6, it's bullish. If it's going to run, it's going to run. And it would do something like this. That's a tough read. It really is. You don't hear me say that very often, but it's a tough read. So we got our ABC. If we got this and it's going to run from here, we can basically copy this leg, pull it right over here and say, boom. Now, back towards about $85. Now let me measure that as far as the fib. We'll get there. So, your 1618, 2618 is probably the most viable target for that if it's going to run that way. So we probably come up and test maybe 50%. So a little steeper wave. However, it's most likely it only goes to 86 as far as that structure. I don't ever like saying I don't know. Okay, so you have I like it. I don't want to discourage you here. Let me put it that way, because I like it. I do like it. So that's your buy side imbalance right there. Unless it takes this shelf out. It really is fairly deep from where we are at $6 lower. But I'd be trying to build a full position on that one. I actually like the way that, to be very candid, because we've got this line that we've skirted. We haven't put a new high in. I'm just going to take this wick. Here's our peak. We didn't quite get there. We rejected, clearly cleaned out a lot of the buyers. So this whole, maybe the same buyers, but there's a whole different group that bought this low, whole different group versus the group that bought the low here. This is more institutional here. This is euphoria. We have 4 generals, extremely euphoric. So it's a good possibility we duplicate that here. I like it. Figure out how to get a full position on that one, or that's what I would see. Ivan Mines, beautiful. Hopefully you got a piece of that. Just trying to get my measuring tool up here. I didn't have time to work that one up. So, Golden Box is back around $15.82 to $17 from where we are now. Heck, I'd even look at $13 leaps if they have it on this one. Even $15 leaps, you want to pay up a little, little riskier on that level. Nice flush though here. We flushed right down to this band. It's consistent. So this shelf right here, this ledge right here, we overshot it. So you got your confirming low, your divergent low. Beautiful. From an RSI structural standpoint, the only thing that really hasn't confirmed the move is the MACD tagging or crossing at this point. But structurally, I'd look at this as an impulse. So this is our 1, this is our 2. So it's going to be, it'll be a little on the choppy side. This is our 1. This will be that's our 2. We'll get a 3. So it'll do something like this is the most likely pattern I would see. So it will be very euphoric to the upside and to the downside here, which is the history of the tape. If you look at the tape, likes to look at all the times it does. Huge run, nice pullback. Decent run, decent pullback. Huge run, huge pullback, took it back. So your real support is way the heck back down here as far as this whole structures. Not a bad thing, because we didn't get nearly back down there. We put in this higher low. So that is even more bullish. I like it. Figure out how to get a full position on there. Oh, that's my 2 cents. All right, look it back to the daily. Hitting a little resistance here. Your slope is much higher on this. Challenge is that wick. Is that real, or was that some rumor somebody bought and then, oh, wait, rumor's not real. We lost the ascending wedge. Barely. I'd move my confirming trend support up and hold 50% of the body of that candle. So I would mark it at 2071, and 212 is how I would manage. Looks good though. So, that would be the number, and use this one down here, this low down here for your confirming trend support line. All right. Clean Spark. Good shot. I didn't get filled yet. I had that good to cancel order in there. And I'm studying this. Still confirming. That's the only thing right there. MACD is crossed, so it's indicated that have some confluence on a sissy here, sell side. We're right there. We need to clear this with a body. Above that 1135, it's worth the chase up to $28. But at this point, it hasn't taken this noise out here, which is sell side. You got sell, 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 right at the same pot, sell, sell, all the way down the road. Everywhere where it's going, it's been selling there. So that's about a 50-50 shot whether we come back and test this shelf first, and that becomes our higher low. However, we do have a body that closes above where that ledge is. You basically can go into this candle right here. Let me put a little price thing right on it. We got the right price. So above that 1143, as far as a close on the body of the candle, that is your trigger or signal to add. Okay. DPRO. MAC is absolutely just flat. When the heck has this thing ever been flat, even in this drawdown? Good spot though, outside of the fact that we're confirming. We got 3 peaking drives in wave 1. Clean ABC as far as a corrective lane. It's a good spot to take a shot. Structurally, yes. So I'm going to call this a flat. So this would be our 1. This would be our 2, 3, 4, 5, something like that, way the heck up there. It could be pretty impulsive. We get back above this. I mean, it could be. I always, whenever I think of a small name like Dragonfly, I'm always running through my mind of why would this get that much push? That's, like what is the catalyst going to be? That's what when I see a name like, I'm like, why is this going to go? And then, so this is a name, if the market continues to catch a bid, especially in earnings, this is a name that could be a sympathy kind of play. So, the math that I would be looking at, I'm going to move my fibs back down, is that you're confirmed move. Well, first of all, it has to close above the 23.686. But your confirmation of the move is really 840, right at that prior resistance band you have there at that 795 roughly. Gets above there. That'll be confirming to the long side. And AMTX. Nice little support marker there. However, not what it likes to do. I mean, I just nailed that, didn't I? I'm sorry, because I know some of you guys are holding it. I mean, I just nailed it. I think I nailed it here. I think I nailed it here, maybe even here. I freaking didn't nail it here, though. I think I sold mine here. But it's, 2 legs, ABC. We don't have it yet. There's, structurally a corrective leg always has a minimum of an ABC. So we got our A, so we probably bounce back to the shelf, and then we get our C, puts in our floor, builds out the flats or the visual force. Structurally, that's my 2 cents. A-Lab, beautiful thing. That's very euphoric. I don't know that 5 is going to be accurate. I'm going to say that's very conservative. I think here is the most likely place. We want to hold, if you're holding here, second generals in. MACD just crossed. Any back test to that aggressive shelf, I'd be adding. AEHR, and you're still holding that? Hold on, did I say that right? Help if I spelled it right, wouldn't it? Are you really still holding that since $9? I think that was where you bought it. Beautiful look, though. It's going to reject here. First general, from a weekly standpoint, it as long as it doesn't take this shelf out. Right here, the body of this candle, right here. It's bullish. It's long until it finishes. Wave 1. Wave 3 is usually the longest wave, so you can push this up to the 423.6. Has a lot of upside if it's going to hold. Very euphoric push there into drive 3. Textbook. Figure out how to hold a piece. I might even roll out of my comment and sell cash secured puts on any pullback to that shelf. I'd probably be trimming into this 2618 because we're going to reject, and it's probably going to come back to in the 60-65 range. So you might be able to get a better price point. All right, UFO. Is that a ETF? Procurement space 5. This is where, forgetting the name of the impulse. The Elliott wave pattern. This is our 3, not the way the app has measured it. Lux Algos. Now I remember it after I looked. So this is peaking drive 1, peaking drive 2. We're going to get a 3. Let's look at it from a fib standpoint. We're going to measure. I'm going to measure. I get the full noise up there. So 2618 is right there. So it's overshooting. 3618 is right where I threw my 3. So that's a good spot for it to head in that direction. I don't think you get a chance to add here this week. This was it. All right. And THX. Thora Exploration, or is that something on THX? We're going to nice pullback, peaking drive 1 grouping here. I'm not going to call that a 2. Next grouping, we're going to get a 3rd one up here. Probably is a tight 3 drive here, the way that we see it. So maybe something, I'm just looking at this distance and saying, boom. This kind of pattern likes equality, so up to this. The only reason it would have been a solider, or my opinion would be, if we hadn't taken out that shelf and that held, that would be very euphoric. So it's defining this is really the ledge the shelf that it's saying, hey, I want to hold this one. So we could get a pullback just in mind position size. You get to pull back to 38, even though we're up at $80. And then it's going to launch, and this becomes a trend with a measured corrective move. RSI confirmed on this low, so it could roll right back over to this line. That's my thought. You did own that one, right, Aditi? If my memory serves me correct. VSAT. believe it or not, it's stocks like that we had a piece of, that we didn't ride all the way, that sort of justifies all the work and effort that I do. Because I can mention hundreds of those, except for I like having a piece of them. Okay, so this is probably what I call an extended three. 1, 2, 3. So it probably does something like this. This is probably the pattern that we get. Still got some nice upside. Should take out this, VSAT, good sector, $68 is viable. It's going to test that. It likes a little stop run. Notice that? Notice that? So we get this high, test it, reject it, fools you, right? And then you get the stop run, brought everybody back in, and boom, you get another stop run, and that's where the dump comes in. So you want to be conscious of that it likes that two-step reject, two-step reject. See how you're seeing that in there? And, we've got a little one down here as well. So it likes that two-step kind of look. Let me throw some fibs up on that. I'm just going to measure, really not a good measuring point from I'm measuring the bound kind of thing. So 1 to 6, 1 8 is totally viable for, grouping 1, grouping 2, grouping 3, reject. If it's really shallow, it's really euphoric, and 5 can run just like 3. Sometimes on this kind of look, 5 becomes the longest wave. In that case, we break through that 4236 up at $194 and do something like that. Okay, anything else, folks? Going once, going twice. All right, everybody have a great day. Good trading. Until next time. No worries. Thanks, guys, gals. Hopefully it was helpful.